Fire Emblem 8, The Sacred Stones, is widely regarded to be one of the easier Fire Emblem games, but is it so easy if all of your characters have 0 strength? I modded my game so that every single player unit has 0 base strength and 0% strength growth, and the same goes for magic. Everything else is unchanged, so while all of my units will struggle to do damage, they will have normal durability, and all enemies except recruitable characters are the same as they are in the base game. With 0 strength and magic, all of my damage will be based on weapon might and other miscellaneous bonuses like weapon effectiveness, weapon triangle, and supports. I can technically gain some strength via promotions, stat boosters, and metis tome, but only if I can obtain them. To add to the difficulty, I'll be playing this as an Ironman challenge, so I cannot reload saves or reset. I don't know if beating the game under these restrictions is actually possible, but I guess we'll find out. In the prologue of FE8, Erika's father dies, and we see that Erika has 0 strength, which is about on par with Erika in a normal playthrough. Seth also has 0 strength, making him as weak as Erika, which is terrifying. This prologue chapter is only 3 enemies, and while Seth can normally defeat them in 1 round, here he only does single-digit damage. As a pre-promoted unit with an artificially induced 0% strength growth, his damage output has very little potential for improvement. In chapter 1 of FE8, we get Franz, who has 0 strength, and Gilliam, who has 0 strength, meaning that for most practical purposes they are useless. Even with 0% strength growth, training characters will still give them stats, but all this does is improve their durability. Hilariously, enemy soldiers are still very weak, even on hard difficulty, and I can still do decent damage to them with 0 strength. But what isn't weak is the boss, Baguette, who has 9 defense and sits on the gate tile. While this normally wouldn't be an issue, it definitely is when Seth can only deal 2 damage a hit to him with a silver lance. Fortunately, we do have a solution. Effective damage from Erika's rapier, which actually, that's still pretty bad. With weapon triangle disadvantage and bad hit rates, I will just have to get lucky, since the boss will 2-shot Erika even if she heals the vulnerary. I get hit on my first attack, but on my second try, I get a lucky critical and defeat him instantly. In chapter 2 of FE8, we are joined by Vanessa, who has 0 strength, Garcia, who has 0 strength, Ross, who has 0 strength, and Motor, who has 0 magic. Unlike the previous 2 losers, these characters are all great. Vanessa can use the triangle attack for triple damage and become a Wyvern Knight for Pierce to ignore defense. Motor can become a Bishop and use his Slater skill for effective damage against monsters. Garcia and Ross can both use axes, which are the best weapon type because of the high base damage. I recruited axe users, but find that the majority of my cast is completely helpless against the bandits, so I have to send Seth down south immediately. Everyone else hides away as Seth swiftly dispatches the first bandits with a silver lance, and then slowly dispatches the rest of them 2 to 3 damage at a time, nearly using up an entire iron sword. Fun fact, one of the main reasons you cannot infinitely grind XP in early FE8 maps is that your units will become too strong and start killing enemies in 1 round. However, in this circumstance where everyone has 0 strength, that will not be a problem. I trap an archer and have Ross repeatedly attack him for minimal damage to gain combat XP until he reaches level 10 for his automatic promotion. However, as I do so, I accidentally mess up my formation and the archer is able to move and 1-shot Vanessa. Fuck! In chapter 3 of FE8, I discovered that Ross actually cannot promote yet because you don't enter battle preparations in this map, which are a requirement for the free trainee promotion. Here we add 2 characters to the roster, Naomi, who has 0 strength, and Colm, who has 0 strength. Naomi can become a sniper as early as chapter 6 and get a massive +3 to strength as her promo bonus, and Colm can steal stat boosters and become an assassin to use the silencer skill, which allows for instant kills. If you set things up correctly, you can actually get Colm to level 20 on this map by setting up a steal loop with the enemy thief. But oh shit, I killed him. I clear the map, but find that the boss is incredibly damaging and tanky. Since he's a bandit, I don't have any effective weapons against him, and only Seth with a silver lance can deal any amount of damage to him. I'm also extremely strapped for healing resources, as a heal staff scales its power based on your magic, and since Motor has 0 magic, it heals for a lot less than it normally should. I just have to throw Seth at the boss and hope I get enough 60% chance hits on him before I run out of HP. I enter combat 3 times and land 5 out of 6 hits, defeating the boss and finally granting me access to the world map. In chapter 4 of FE8, we are joined by Arthur, who has 0 magic, and Lute, who has 0 magic. Arthur can become a Bishop or Slayer, while Lute doesn't have any special mechanics. But doing magic damage is still very useful against enemy Arbor Knights and other foes that have high defense. Ross finally promotes and becomes a pirate for +2 strength. but unfortunately he's still very slow, having gained only 1 point of speed in 9 levels. Clearly, I must use alternative methods of gaining power, and so I decided to build supports. Supports in FE8 can grant additional damage based on your affinity. If both your unit and the support pair have a fire, wind, light, or anima affinity, then you can get 1 additional might per support rank. Supports in FE8 are capped at 5 total ranks, so this is a potential plus 5 damage depending on the character and their available living support partners. I have Ross build support to Garcia, and with all of these bonuses, Ross has become incredibly strong and is capable of doing double-digit damage. In Chapter 5 of FE8, we recruit Natasha, who has 0 magic, and can potentially recruit Joshua, who has 0 strength. Natasha can become a bishop while Joshua has great speed. Since he's exactly as strong as most of my units, that means he's actually pretty good since he can often double. This map has an optional time-based objective for a guiding ring, which you can obtain only if you save all of the villages. Unfortunately, some are pretty far away, and because of my low damage output, I cannot fight my way through very quickly. As the first group of bandits spawn, I try to push as far as I can, but I overextend and due to my Lord healing ability, Gilliam is targeted and killed. Unfortunate. I save the first village and get the Draco shield, and the second one as well. Unfortunately, I am blocked out from the third village and it is destroyed, losing me access to the promotion item. As a small consolation, Joshua comes to attack me, as he has 0 strength and I have 0 strength. He cannot kill me and I cannot kill him, making it very easy to recruit him. I clear the map and send Ross into the arena, and he somehow manages to win a couple of battles, but soon the enemy scaling gets too harsh and I have to stop. It seems that arena grinding with 0 strength is not viable. I decide to move on and kill the boss with my newly obtained Armor Slayer. In Chapter 5X of FE8, we are introduced to Ephraim, who has 0 strength, Kyle, who has 0 strength, Ford, who has 0 strength, and Orson, who has 15 strength. Oh shit, give me a moment. And Orson, who has 0 strength. While these characters don't actually join the main squad until Chapter 8, I might as well talk about them now. Ephraim can do tremendous effective damage with the Regan Leaf, but he will mostly be absent because I will likely play the Erica route. Kyle and Ford are garbage, and Orson has amazing stats and is incredibly loyal. Here, we have extremely limited weapons and healing resources, so I decided to play it safe and just let Orson do most of the killing. The difficulty comes with the boss, who has 7 defense and a throne bonus, so even Orson can only do 3 damage to him with a silver sword. I decide to build a C support between Ephraim and Ford to get an extra point of damage, so Ephraim can do 2 damage a hit with a killer lance. I attack repeatedly with Ephraim and Orson to fish for critical hits, and I kill the boss in around a dozen attacks. And customarily, before I leave the chapter, I take all of Orson's belongings, just to be safe, because there is 0 chance of him betraying us to indulge in necrophilia. In Chapter 6 of FE8, we are joined by nobody. There are no new units in this chapter. This map has Fog of War and a time-based objective to defeat the boss before the giant spider kills all the villagers. Normally, you will send Vanessa to fight the spider and save them, but here, Vanessa will be unable to damage the spider due to having 0 strength and also being dead. I go north instead of south and fight a lot of cavaliers who quickly overwhelm me, resulting in Combe being killed, which is a tremendous loss because he is my only thief until Renak joins. Erica finally managed to pull her weight by using her rapier to do tremendous damage to a cavalier as I try to rush the boss in order to save the civilians. Unfortunately, I am too late and 2 out of the 3 villagers are killed, losing me the only Orion's vote and making sure that Naomi will probably never be able to promote. Right before the last villager dies, I manage to swarm the boss with all my characters, attacking with Seth, Joshua, Ross, Garcia, and finally Naomi, who takes him down with a 69% hit. In Chapter 7 of FE8, we can normally obtain an energy ring by stealing from an enemy mage, but unfortunately, Combe, my only thief, is dead, so I can't get it. This map otherwise plays fairly normally, though it takes around 5 to 6 times as many turns because of my lower damage output. Hilariously, the enemies are barely even a threat, and the ballista, the feature of the map, barely does anything, which just goes to show how weak FE8 enemies actually are. I reach the boss, and I break his weapon so can boss abuse gain extra XP, and I use up all of my iron axes so that Ross can reach level 20, having gained 0 strength from levels, but also having only reached a total of 10 speed, which is pathetically low, but hilariously not even that far below average. At level 20, Ross has the same amount of speed as Garcia at level 9. In Chapter 8 of FE8, Ephraim, Ford, and Kyle join back up, but only Ephraim is useful because the Regan Leaf is ridiculous. With no thief on my roster, I try to trick an enemy thief into opening a chest with a Cerebro, but unfortunately he just keeps attacking me, so I have to kill him. Fortunately, I remember that I had a spare chest key from chapter 3, so I'm able to get a stat booster anyway. I have to pass up on the Silver Sword, which would have been nice, and an Elysian Whip, which I can't use anyway because Vanessa is dead. I waddle up to a throne and sick Ephraim at the boss, and due to his abilities as a Mary Sue and having a 10 damage effective weapon, he is able to one-round Tyrrell. Damn. We then come to the split between the Erica and Ephraim routes, and I picked the easier Erica route because I'm reasonably sure that harder maps like Phantom Ship would just kill me. In chapter 9 of FE8, we recruit Tana, who has 0 strength, and can also potentially recruit Amelia, who has 0 strength. Tana is a fire and can become a Wyvern Knight for Pierce, while Amelia can promote twice for extra strength. This map will give you a Cerebro if you visit both villages, so I send Tana down south to get the Rapier from the east village, and I send Seth very far forward to get the Draco Shield from the west village. Unfortunately, Seth gets trapped and is unable to get out because he cannot kill enemies fast enough. While his defense makes him immune to most enemies, one particular sniper, infamous for being particularly strong on this map, can strike him for 4 damage a hit. I desperately try to hurry the rest of my team to rescue Seth, but the number of enemies that come at me slows me down significantly as Seth is repeatedly attacked. I sneak forward through as cannon fodder to try to lure enemies away from Seth, but he gets doubled by Myrmidon and dies for nothing. As Seth is 1 hit away from being killed, I send Tana on a suicidal delivery run to give Seth an elixir, which saves his life at the cost of hers. And hilariously, while all this is happening, Amelia actually straight up gets tired and leaves the map because I took too long to reach her. In chapter 10 of FE8, we can recruit Inez, who has 0 strength, Garrick, who has 0 strength, Tethys, who has 0 strength, and Marissa, who has 0 strength. Inez is a sniper with great stats, and he'll still be able to kill most flying enemies even with 0 strength because of effective damage from bows. Garrick, without the strength, is overall kinda bad because swords aren't very good, and Tethys is unchanged to the base game because dancers don't fight. Marissa can become an assassin, but unfortunately the number of hero crests I get is limited. I promote Ross using the Ocean Seal from chapter 9 to make him into a berserker for a tasty +1 strength for a total of 3. Right out of the gate, Franz is suddenly killed for no reason as I move down to try to recruit all the characters, which is made more difficult because Tana died last map. It is very difficult for the green units to protect Tethys because of their lower damage output, and she is very nearly killed by Ballista several times. I managed to recruit everyone, but then a ton of reinforcement fires come into attack. I turn her up and Nami and Inez are able to one-shot most of them even with 0 strength, so it ends up being no big deal. Using Garrick's hero crest, I promote Garcia into a hero to improve his speed, and I kill the boss Pablo for my first guiding ring. In chapter 11 of FE8, we can potentially recruit La Rochelle, who has 0 magic, and Daza, who has 0 strength. La Rochelle isn't very impressive because she can't become a bishop, but she can provide a +3 damage support for Joshua. Daza is mediocre, but at least is decently durable and has a lot of HP. I use my guiding ring to promote Mulder into a bishop so we can start murderizing monsters, which are the only enemies you face on this map. La Rochelle and Daza start pretty far away and are constantly under attack, so I must try to reach and rescue them. Unfortunately, even with the incredibly powerful battle axe, Daza is unable to one-round any of the attacking enemies, and thus La Rochelle was quickly swarmed and killed without me being able to do anything about it. In other words, I got battle before it dawned. I managed to clear the rest of the enemies while keeping Daza alive, so he joins us at the end of the map. In chapter 12 of FE8, we get Saleh, who has 0 magic, and Edwin, who has 0 magic. Saleh is quite fast, while Edwin can become a summoner who can summon an infinite number of phantoms who all have 0 strength. I begin the chapter by going on an extended rant about why I don't like playing ROM hacks on my YouTube channel, as I play the ROM hack on my YouTube channel. I argue that the core experience of Fire Emblem is that it has a history, and that other people have played the same game, resulting in a mutual shared experience. Fire Emblem ROM hacks, though superficially similar to actual Fire Emblem games, are inherently incapable of tapping into the strength because of their poor accessibility and low relatability to most players. I ascribe this to some kind of uncanny valley effect, where changing something small, like making everyone have 0 strength, can make the game still feel like Fire Emblem. But the more things you change, the more rapidly the game feels like the metaphorical equivalent of a creature dressed in human skin. I continue by pontificating my thoughts on— oh shit, is that a gargoyle? Oh fuck, they just killed Luke. After chapter 12 of FE8, I decide to go into the Tower of Boney so I can farm rune swords. Rune swords are an A-rank sword with 12 might that deal magical damage and heals the user at the penalty of having your strength. Normally this weapon is kinda bad, but since most of my characters have 0 strength, half of 0 is still 0, so here it is excellent. I use an RNG abuse trick to guarantee the appearance of a rune sword on the first floor, which goes like this. First, enter the Tower of Boney and start a battle. Second, retreat retreat immediately. 3rd, save the game and do a hard reset. And finally, 4th, enter the tower again, and now there will be a Bone Walker in the upper left with a Runesword. In order to obtain the Runesword, you've got to kill this guy from outside his range on player phase, or else he'll change weapons and you just get an Iron Lance. I set up my farming method by having Ross kill most of the enemies using Iron Axes, and then sneak Motor to get the kill by doubling him with a Shine Tome. I repeat this process for a little over an hour and obtain over 20 Runeswords. In Chapter 13 of FE8, we can recruit Cormac, who has 0 strength, as well as Amelia, who has returned from Chapter 9, and who has 0 strength. Cormac can immediately promote into a Wyvern Knight for Pierce, and Amelia at this point is not worth using. I take back everything. She is complete garbage, don't use her. This is a defend map where you can either try to survive for 11 turns, or end the map early by defeating the boss, but I don't really have any chance of doing so. I start by attacking the ballistas with rune swords, which do a crazy amount of damage, sometimes even double digits, but this isn't enough to actually kill anything, and I am pushed back. I sacrifice Kyle so I can safely recruit Amelia, but right after I recruit Cormac, Dazla is overwhelmed and killed because of my lack of healing. Suddenly, reinforcements storm in from the left, and I am repeatedly attacked by a Purge Tome, which puts Erica into mortal danger. I hide behind the choke point, and on the last turn, I spy a warrior that has a Sword Slayer, an axe that does effective damage against sword classes, and I decide that I must have this, and I go on an all-out assault to obtain it. Ross attacks with the Killer Axe for a 72% crit chance, and Motor lands a crit as well, bringing the warrior down to 7 HP, which is just barely enough for Seth to finish him off with a Rune Sword. This awards you with a Sword Slayer, which will be essential to defeat bosses in upcoming maps. In Chapter 14 of FE8, we can recruit Renak, who has 0 strength. Renak is the only other thief you can get in FE8 aside from Comb, but at this point you can already buy chests and door keys, so he's kind of redundant. I go through the center and defeat the archers using rune swords, and then break the wall and pay 10k to recruit Renak, because La Rochelle was unable to recruit him for free due to being dead. I grab a guiding ring and hero crest and use them to promote Ewan into a summoner, and hilariously his phantoms are berserked by an enemy staff user and turn around to attack him. However, as the phantoms have 0 strength, this ends up just being funny instead of tragic. I also promote Joshua into an assassin for the silencer skill for future boss killing. Speaking of bosses, the boss on this map is Carlisle, a swordmaster. Normally you wouldn't be able to trivialize him with an effective weapon like an Armor Knight, but the Sword Slayer I got last map allows me to do exactly that. I have Ross move up and wipe him from the face of the earth with a 108 damage crit.
Nuclear launch detected.
In Chapter 15 of FE8, Ephraim rejoins the crew with 0 strength, and he brings with him Duso, who has 0 strength, and Null, who has 0 magic. Duso is an incredibly strong pre-pro, while Null can become a summoner. There are 2 bosses on this map, Kellic and Volter, who both have a lot of defense. I immediately go left to deal with Kellic, who is a hero and has the Hoplon Guard, making him invulnerable to critical hits, but he is still susceptible to effective damage, so I attack him with a Sword Slayer, killing him in 1 round, and resulting in the immediate cessation of his existence. I have Renak get most of the hidden treasure on the map, and also have him steal a guiding ring from an enemy shaman, but this places him in range of the Devil Axe Berserker, who immediately kills him. After this tragic loss, I move to defeat the other boss, Volter, who is a Wyvern Knight and has the Firelight Shield, which renders him immune to effective damage from bows, but he is still vulnerable to effective damage from dragon slaying weapons. For what is possibly the first time ever in history, I actually use a Dragon Axe to obtain on this map for its intended purpose, which is subdividing Volter into his constituent atoms. In Chapter 16 of FE8, we get Myrrh, who has 0 strength, but regardless is one of the strongest units in the game, being able to do 28 base damage against regular enemies and 60 against monsters straight out of the box. Though as a counterbalance this, she can only attack 50 times before her Dragon Stone is depleted. Some have an irrational fear of using Myrrh because of this, but I would argue that not using Myrrh is comparable to trying to conserve ammunition during a home invasion. 3 masked thugs break into your house and you try to fight them off with a death slap? Who are you trying to save those bullets for? God? I give Myrrh the metis tome so she has a tremendous 5% strength growth, so on average by the time she reaches level 20, she could potentially have 1 strength. I train Myrrh to the other chapter, where she is basically invincible because she starts with 17 defense and has a 150% defense growth. And I reach the boss, Orson, who has 1 strength because I messed up when editing his stats. As penance for this mistake, I equip Ross with a Devil Axe and try to have him kill himself with a 1% chance Devil Axe backfire critical, and I even repair the Devil Axe with a burn staff to get more attempts, but alas, even after 40 tries, I did not get a devil axe backfire even once. I decided to just kill Orson, and then in the following cutscene, burn his body pillow to hide the evidence of his conjugal visits to the morgue. In chapter 17 of FE8, we can recruit the final character, Serene, who has 0 strength. She's not very good. I move immediately to the middle island and am surrounded by cavalry and heroes to the south, mages to the east, and wyverns and druids to the north. Ross kills the heroes of the Sword Slayer, Ephraim uses the Regan Leaf to take care of the horse units, and I use bows and dragon slaying weapons against the wyverns, but I don't have enough damage to deal with the druids. All of the villagers are killed, and I have Seth dodge check the druids at the bridge, and this goes well for a little while before he is struck by a 47% hit Nosferatu, and then two 26% hit Lunas all in one turn, which when taking into account true hit has a roughly 0.85% chance of occurring. God damn. Not only do I lose Seth, I also lose the Hoplon Guard and the Oddhoma, which is pretty bad. I make it through the druids, but the reinforcements don't let up. I have to hurry to defeat the boss before I get overwhelmed. Lion is quite intimidating as he has 18 defense and a Nosferatu tome, which can easily heal himself with the full HP every turn. This is quite bad since I can only do single-digit damage. Normally, I would try to break his weapons with my face, but I cannot wait 50 turns for that to happen because the reinforcements will overwhelm me. So I decided to gamble on a silencer activation from Joshua. I give him a Shamshire, of which I have only one, and repeatedly attack Lion in the hopes of getting an instant kill. Silencer activation chance is half of your crit chance, but this probability is halved again against bosses, so I only have a 10% chance of success. Furthermore, once the Shamshire breaks, my crit chance will go down drastically, and so will my chances of killing the boss. Joshua repeatedly fails to kill Lion 9 times in a row, but finally, on the 10th try, he triggers Silencer, and insta-kills Lion from full HP. In chapter 18 of FE8, we face a map consisting entirely of monsters. This map has a ton of eggs which all hatch into threatening Gorgons, who all use powerful dark magic. Normally, you would move aggressively through the map and clear all the eggs before they hatch, but in my case, the eggs are actually very difficult to kill. They all have 10 defense and do not count as monsters for the purpose of effective weapon calculation, so for the most part, I actually cannot kill them at all. Let me repeat that. In this run, I am not strong enough to destroy Gorgon eggs. Ridiculous. Nearly all of the Gorgons hatch, and I hide away in the starting area, luring them away with phantoms before one-shotting them with legendary weapons. This is a route map, which isn't too bad, but clearing every enemy will take a tremendous toll on my resources, as my legendary weapons are my only real way of defeating monsters because of their high HP and defense. So I decided to use an alternative method, known as the enemy control glitch. Here's how it works. When an enemy attacks and would end their turn on an event tile, such as a fire tile, if you reset the game at the right moment, right after the attack but before they turn gray, then you can take control of the turn and every enemy that has not yet moved, allowing you to do a ton of shenanigans. I consider stealing the enemy dark magic such as Stone and Demon Surge, but I decided against it and instead take a Toxin Lance, an enemy only weapon that can inflict poison, so I can use it for a funny boss kill strategy. I then repeatedly use the enemy control glitch and move every single monster onto fire tiles, throwing away all their weapons so that none of them can do anything except wait while they were all slowly roasted to death 10 HP at a time. I leave one enemy for last so Myrrh can get a kill to get her final level. Even with the metis tome, she has not leveled strength a single time, and upon reaching her level cap has gained a total of 0 strength, for a total of 0 strength. Chapter 19 of FE8 is a defend map where we must protect Pontifex Manso, who has 11 strength, which is more than anyone on my team. Technically speaking, we can end the map by defeating the boss, but given that I have 0 strength, that is not viable. The map is populated by multiple suicidal Rosted Knights, and if you save 4 of them, you can get a light burn at the end of the map, but unfortunately, no human being alive has ever achieved this. Since this map is populated by ridiculously strong promoter units, my only chance is to abandon the throne room and seek refuge in the upper left corner. I have Erica rescue Manso and make a beeline with most of my characters into the safe room. I have Cyrena and Cormac try to rescue some knights, but too many of them suicidally attack the enemy forces and die instantly. On the approach to the safe room, Saleh is killed by druids, Cyrena is murdered by an archer, and Amelia dies to a swordmaster. I use my strong units to hold the line while everyone else shuffles to safety into the upper left. I shut the door by having Ross sit at the entry point without a weapon and then consider my next steps. The enemies all line up and get completely stuck, unable to attack me, so I have already essentially won the map. However, thieves come in to steal all the treasure, including a rune sword from a room directly below me. I decide I must have this rune sword, and I use a warp staff to teleport Cormac to claim it without any exit strategy. But I am too late, and the thief leaves vision range before I can get to him, and Cormac dies for nothing. In chapter 20 of FE8, there are a total of 157 enemies? What? This map is filled with incredibly powerful monsters and frequent reinforcements, not to mention that the boss, Morva, is an extremely powerful Draco zombie. Fortunately, because I lost a lot of characters in the previous map, I'm actually able to deploy every remaining character on my team. Normally people skip this map by killing the boss and warping the Lord into seas, but I don't think I can do that because I'm not sure if Mur can kill Morva in one round with 0 strength. So I decide to take the slow route, fighting nearly every enemy that spawns. What ensues is a nearly 2-hour-long struggle, a battle of attrition as I expend nearly every use of my legendary weapons. I go through the top route where nearly all the reinforcements spawn, defeating Cyclosses from the north, Mildews from the west, Mogols from the center, and Death Ghouls from every direction. I use Phantom to distract enemies and lure away shadow shots, but Nabi, identified as being weaker than the Phantom, is prioritized over one and killed. Marissa dies soon after due to being sniped by a Mogol. As I push further into the center of the map, Ardor is flanked and defeated by gargoyles, taking the Ivaldi with him, and as I move towards Morva, I trigger the secondary boss Reeve, who moves and attacks Duso with a very high crit chance. But fortunately, Duso lives. I am forced to gamble with Mur, who only has 7 Dragonstone uses left by this point, and she manages to crit Reeve so I can finish him off with Ross. At this point, I'm stuck in the middle of massive spider and serpent spawns, and I can do nothing about it. The enemies are too tanky to clear before the next group spawns, and as a result, I'm overwhelmed, resulting in Natasha and Garrett's deaths. As I make a final push towards the boss, Null is suddenly sniped by Cerberus because he was prioritized over a Phantom due to being unarmed. At this point, it is turn 29, and I have killed around 125 enemies, nearly 80% of the 157 possible enemies on this map. And it is at this point that I find out that Mur is actually capable of killing Morva in one round, even with 0 strength, and that all of my pain on this chapter was almost completely unnecessary. Have Mur kill her father and then warp Erica over 5 tiles to reach a seize point, only to find out that her path was obstructed by a forest hidden by an enemy, so she was 2 tiles short. I cursed this stupid game as I racked my brain for a few stunned moments before I realized I can have Tethys dance her motor so he can warp Erica again, allowing her to reach the gate and seize to complete the chapter. In the final chapter of FE8, most of my legendary weapons are nearly used up and Mur only has a single Dragonstone use left, so I am forced to buy E-rank weapons for the armory in the prep screen because I'm actually running out of weapons in general. I push through the early parts of the map with low cost weapons and fight one of the Draco zombies, who I take down with a lucky double Dragon Axe crit from Ross. If you approach Lion from the stairs below him, that will spawn 30 skeletons on your ass, but since I approach from the right, I manage to avoid this entirely. I slowly peel away Lion's entourage of Gorgons by attacking and rescue dropping my units away to exploit their passive AI, and Lion is truly a ridiculous enemy, having 74 HP and 26 defense, making it very difficult to damage him since there are no weapons that do effective damage against necromancers. Furthermore, his Naglfar tome also has infinite uses, so breaking his weapons is not possible either. However, there are ways to do damage that ignores defense, one of which is Eclipse, a long-range dark magic tome that halves your opponent's HP. It has awful hit rates, so to increase it, I grind supports between Ewan, Ross, and Tethys, and he manages to nail Lion with an Eclipse for a stunning 37 damage. Pierce is another alternative, but all my Pierce users are dead. So I follow up with the Toxin Lance that I stole from my enemy in chapter 18. I have Effort move in to attack with the Contraband Toxin Lance for 0 damage to inflict the poison status effect on Lion. Lion does not move and does not have passive healing, so I can continually reapply poison with this unlawful Toxin Lance to slowly poison him to death. In a similar manner to how his father died from an incurable terminal illness, the Crown Prince of Grado can do absolutely nothing as he repeatedly takes 1 to 3 damage every turn from this illegal bioweapon. Ephraim performs the final application of poison with a 0 damage crit, and Lion finally goes down. The Demon King is resurrected, but his soul is immediately spawn-capped bored by the Sacred Stone of Ralston. Despite being a soulless husk, the Demon King is ridiculously strong, having 120 HP, 36 defense, and 41 resistance. I open the battle by having Ephraim try to poison him with a Toxin Lance, but unfortunately the Demon King is vaccinated. I move everyone else in, and the Demon King summons 8 monsters as reinforcements, 2 of which are Draco zombies, which is very unlucky. I have Ewan try for a 60 damage Eclipse, but unfortunately he misses, so I decide to deal with the summons first, because for the most part my characters can only do single-digit damage to the Demon King. This might be the first time in history that anyone has let this final boss live past turn 2. Garcia and Duso each take down a white, Erica kills a male druid, and Ephraim defeats a death coil. I use Mur's last Dragonstone to try to kill a Draco zombie, but not only does she not crit, I make a very stupid blunder by accidentally trading all of my axes to her, so Ross actually cannot attack. I have Motorer use the Latona staff to heal everyone to full HP, and then brace for impact. The Demon King moves moves first and is actually arranged to one-shot Erica with Demon Light, but he casts Nightmare instead, putting nearly my entire army to sleep, rendering them completely helpless and unable to act. Fortunately, Motor was just outside the blast radius, and I managed to cast another Latona to wake everyone up. Ross finishes off the Draco Zombie, Ephraim in his take down 2 Melduins, and I nearly killed the other Draco Zombie as well. With nearly all of the goons taken care of, we can now fight the Demon King properly. What? He summons again? That wasn't in the wiki. This behavior likely was not documented because everyone normally kills the Demon King immediately before any of this could happen. Having discovered that the Demon King can theoretically summon infinite reinforcements, I lose all hope in being able to grind him down, and so I decide that it's now or never. I must take down the Demon King immediately. I try for another 60 damage Eclipse on the Demon King, but it also misses, and so I have Ross move into attack with the Garm, and with his stat boost to 7 strength and support bonuses, he nails the Demon King for a 48 damage crit. I have Tethys dance for him, and he lands yet another 48 damage crit. I trade over the Garm to Garcia, who hits the Demon King for 8 more damage, bringing him down to 16 HP. That was all the damage I could do this turn, so now I must focus on trying to survive. I have Erica and Duso slay 2 killable whites, and Ephraim takes down the Gargoyle, while Inez kills an Archmogul. Everyone else is on body blocking duty, especially Myrrh, who now can no longer attack. And I have Motor use the 3rd and last charge of the Latona staff to heal everyone to full HP one last time. The Demon King moves and immediately obliterates Ewan with Demon Light. Inez is annihilated by a Draco Zombie. Myrrh, who is now incapable of combat, is attacked repeatedly and barely survives. Finally, it is my turn again, and I have Garcia attack with the Garm, and then trade it over to Ross, who swings and defeats the Demon King once and for all. This concludes my Fire Emblem 8 Zero Strength Ironman, which took exactly 2018 turns. Of my entire army, there were 9 survivors: Erica, Ephraim, Ross, Garcia, Motor, Joshua, Tethys, Duso, and Myrrh. The character endings are, as a result, quite sad, but fortunately you could just watch those on YouTube instead. After the credits, I loaded my file again and found that Ross's win counter actually glitched out and for some reason says that he has over 1.2 million battles. Overall, this challenge was much more difficult than I initially imagined, but at the same time, I was also surprised by just how possible it was. Maybe it's just me, but some elements of the game feel for some reason as if they were designed around having 0 strength, such as nearly every boss being able to be taken down with effective weapons. Sacred Stones is normally quite easy, but with 0 strength, it generally becomes a challenging and exciting, albeit sometimes tedious experience. Anyway, if you enjoyed this series and would like to see more like it, please remember to comment, like the video, and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I put a lot of work into my videos. So if you want to support me in this endeavor, consider becoming a YouTube member, contributing to my Patreon, or showing up the next time I stream. Thanks for watching, and see you all in the next one.